You know, the Red Ribbon Army has to be the Z Fighters' greatest threat at this point. I mean, they literally manufacture weapons of mass destruction neatly packed inside of metal people, and although they never had a huge impact on the universe like other villains before and after them, that doesn't stop them from giving our heroes a run for their money. Almost every iteration of their androids are stronger than the last and have proven to be more than capable of surpassing our heroes. There are a number of different types of androids in the Dragon Ball universe, and in this video I plan on exploring them all. Up first, we have the mechanical type android. The mechanical type android is completely robotic. Internally, this type of android has wires for veins, oil for blood, and sophisticated computers for their brains and other parts. Nothing about them is organic. Next, we have the biomechanical type android, and like the name implies, this type of android is both organic and mechanical. They usually have a human as a base, and that human is mechanically modified, and thus the biomechanical android is born. The last type of android is the bio-android, and they are completely organic, and are considered androids due to being created through biological engineering. With the different type of androids out of the way, the next thing to explain is the different energy models. As of right now, there are 3 of them. The first being the infinite energy models, and as confusing as this is, this model doesn't actually have infinite ki as many people would believe. What this model actually has is infinite stamina, meaning that they don't get tired. Alongside that, the ki of an infinite energy model cannot be detected. The next one is the energy absorption model, and this model has its own storage of ki, but they can add onto it by absorbing others' energy and as a result weakening their foes and strengthening themselves. Just like the previously mentioned model, their ki is not able to be sensed. The last model is the organic energy model, and they function very similarly to normal characters in the series, and because of that their ki is detectable by others. Now with that, let's see what androids we meet throughout the series. But before we do, tell me what kind of android would you make, which type and energy model would you use, also what special ability would you give them if you were to give them one. Anyways, in the original series we get the pleasure of meeting 2 androids. The first being Major Metallitron, and the second being Android 8, who goes by Ader nowadays. Major Metallitron was a mechanical type android that seemingly didn't have any of the 3 energy models stated above. This could be because he was one of the earliest androids created by Dr. Gero before he made any of those energy sources. Major Metallitron without a doubt was inspired by Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator, and his personality mirrors that. He's very stoic and very confident in his own abilities. We don't get to see much from him, as his biggest claim to fame was taking on Kid Goku and being able to compete with him for a time before he got decommissioned. Moving on, we have the original kind-hearted android, Ader. Just like the Major before him, Android 8 is a mechanical type android, and according to some sources, it seems that he was the first infinite energy model to be created. By taking one look at Ader, you can tell that he was inspired by Frankenstein's monster. And like Frankenstein's monster, Ader is an innocent character whose appearance makes him look more frightening than he actually is. In terms of power, we don't know how strong Ader really is. This is because he's never been seen going all out in a fight before. Only thing we really ever see him do is one-shot General White. Moving on to Dragon Ball Z, we meet a grand total of 9 androids. 6 from the canon series and 3 from movie 7. Starting off with Android 13, he's a very interesting android due to the Dragon Ball wiki stating that he's both a mechanical android according to a guidebook and a biomechanical android according to the games. I know it would make the most sense to go with what the guidebook has to say, and believe me I will, but come on, he looks way too familiar to that trucker that got creamed in that one episode. But for simplicity's sake, we'll just say that he's a mechanical type android. As for what energy model he has, well, it's never stated anywhere, but evidence would show that he's more than likely to be an infinite energy model due to him not being a bio android, which should disqualify him from having the organic energy type. And he can't be the energy absorption model due to him missing the red orbs on the palms of his hand that are synonymous with that model. So he'd have to be an infinite energy model, or he could be just like Major Metallitron and just not have any of them, but I doubt that's the case. Now the last thing that makes Android 13 interesting is the fact that he seems to share a similar function to one of Dr. Gero's other androids, Cell. Essentially similar to Cell, 13 requires 2 other androids in order to obtain his true form. By absorbing 14 and 15, Android 13 can tap into an even stronger form, dubbed Super 13, where he gets notably stronger and his appearance and personality changes drastically. In terms of who this character was based off of, many believe that 13 was poking fun at the redneck stereotype. The Funimation even goes as far as giving him the accent to boot. In terms of power, he was the strongest out of 14 and 15 due to his super form, easily being able to defeat 3 Super Saiyans simultaneously. Moving on, 14 and 15 are both mechanical type androids that I believe are of the infinite energy model due to the reasons I gave for 13. These androids as well as 13 were made for the sole purpose of destroying Goku, and there isn't really much to say about them. And in terms of strength, they rival the Saiyans in their base forms. These 3 androids in the original series were destroyed, but it was said that they were close to perfection. Pretty interesting fact about them. Moving on to the canon androids, first up is 16. 16 is extremely similar to another android I mentioned earlier, and that is Ader. Both of these androids have appearances that would indicate that they are much more brutish than they actually are. Both of them are kind-hearted androids that care about the world around them, and similar to Ader, 16 is an infinite energy mechanical type android. A fun fact about 16 is that he's actually based off of a character that is in the series. Dr. Gero based 16 off of his own son, a man by the name of Jevo, well, one of the two, who was a soldier in the Red Ribbon Army. Unfortunately for him, he was killed when Goku destroyed the Red Ribbon Army base all the way back in OG Dragon Ball. Now it makes a lot more sense as to why Dr. Gero wanted his revenge. It wasn't just for the army. In terms of power, 16 was able to overpower First Form Cell, which was pretty impressive back in the day. If I'm being honest, he was my favorite android back in Z, and it's a shame that we lost this character. He was such a kind-hearted person. Up next, we have 17 and 18. These two are the first biomechanical type androids, and as of right now, they're the only canon ones. In terms of their energy source, they were infinite energy models. Before they got turned into androids, these two were a pair of twins by the name of Lapis and Lazuli. Sources say there were mischiefs in their past lives, always up to no good and getting into trouble. This eventually led to Dr. Gero setting his sights on them for his experiments. The doctor kidnapped the two delinquents and turned them into androids against their will. Their personalities in their first appearance seems to be similar to how they were when they got turned, with 17 being the more mischievous one out of the two. However, as time went on, these two mellowed out a lot. In terms of power, in their first appearance, they were stronger than Super Saiyans, and as time continued, they began to grow stronger in strength, with 17 reaching extremely high levels of power. Some believe that he's Super Saiyan 3 Goku level, and others believe that he scales even higher. But regardless of that, he's still extremely strong in his own right. Same goes for 18, although she isn't as strong as her brother, she's still extremely strong. This is because even though she doesn't train, the androids don't get any weaker even after years of being stagnant. So if anything, she's still as strong as she used to be. The next two androids we have are androids 19 and 20. 19 was a mechanical type android that used the energy absorption model, and there isn't much to say about him besides the fact that he was used to build android 20, who was once Dr. Gero. In terms of strength, 19 was weaker than 16, 17, and 18, but he was still able to go toe-to-toe against a Super Saiyan for a little while before he got scrapped. Up next is the Doctor himself. Android 20 is the exact same make and model as Android 19. The reason as to why he converted himself into an android was due to Android 17 and 18 being hard to control, as well as the other failures he created, that being every other android prior, and as a result he decided to take things into his own hands. Dr. Gero was just as strong, probably stronger than 19. He's the granddaddy of the androids, and without him we wouldn't have what people consider to be the best villain in the series. Yes, up next we have the man, the bug thing, the myth, the legend himself, Cell. The first bio-android introduced into the series, Cell is also the first to be made using the organic energy model. I think we can all agree that Cell is the most unique android that Dr. Gero created. Through the use of biochemical engineering, Dr. Gero was able to pack the cells of the most powerful warriors to ever touch the earth into a single fighter. Unlike most of the androids before him, Cell has a total of 3 forms that could only be unlocked once he absorbs 17 and 18. A very interesting design choice. Now there isn't a concrete reason as to why Cell needs to absorb the androids to reach his perfect form, but something very interesting happens to Cell once he absorbs them. Cell becomes a hybrid when it comes to his energy model. You see, Perfect Cell uses both the infinite and organic energy model. In terms of strength, Cell is extremely powerful, being able to easily overpower full power Super Saiyan Goku. The last androids to be introduced in DBZ were the Cell Juniors, and in short, they were just miniature versions of Cell. Yes, Cell was a mama and papa. whatever. Not really much to say about these guys, as they were only around for what seems like 10 to 15 minutes before they got obliterated. A fact that I wanted to leave here is that almost every android introduced into this saga was not planned. Akira Toriyama originally had 19 and 20 planned as the big bads for this saga, but due to his editor giving valid criticism, this changed to 16, 17, and 18, and later Cell. Pretty wild ride, but many can agree it was worth it. Moving on, Dragon Ball Super introduces us to 6 androids. That is if we count the Alpha Series androids as a whole and the Beta Series androids as a whole. I mean, can you blame me for bunching these guys together? Like come on, like some of these guys aren't even worth mentioning. Anyways, the first androids we meet in DBS are the Alpha Series androids, and the only one that's really worth talking about is Alpha 12. These androids, believe it or not, are actually biomechanical type androids. This is due to them being composed of bodies of dead humans, meaning that they have an organic body that has been mechanically enhanced. So although they were dead, they still fall under the definition of a biomechanical android. As for what energy source they use, well, it's hard to say, but it's safe to say that they actually don't use any of the 3 energy sources that Dr. Gero created. There isn't any evidence that proves that they use them. They can't be the absorption model due to obvious reasons, and the reason I believe that they can't be the infinite energy models is simply that Dr. Hito is working with scraps compared to what his grandfather was working with. It's highly unlikely for him to be able to recreate something so technologically advanced with so little, and the same goes for the organic energy model, meaning that the Alpha Series androids mirror Major Metallotron in that they don't have an energy model. Moving on to who they were inspired by, these guys are similar to Ader in the sense that they are loosely based off of Frankenstein's monster, kinda more obvious in my opinion. In terms of strength, the Alpha Series androids are extremely weak compared to a lot of Dr. Gero's creations, with the strongest of them being outdone by one punch from a Super Saiyan Team Trunks. The next androids we see in DBS is the Beta Series androids, and just like the previous series of androids, only one of them is worth talking about here, and that is Beta 1. The thing about Dr. Hito's earlier androids is that almost all of them are made of corpses, that includes Beta 1. So that makes Beta 1 another biomechanical type android. And just like the previous series of androids, it's highly unlikely that they use any energy models. The only difference between the Beta Series androids compared to the Alpha Series androids is simply that they are more combat focused compared to the Alpha Series, and as a result they are stronger than the strongest Alpha Series androids, Android 12. But even with this, there's still nothing compared to Goten and Trunks. Now, Beta 1 without a doubt is based off of a character in OG Dragon Ball. For those who have watched the series, you probably already know who it is, but for those who don't know, Beta 1 is based off of a man named General Blue. The last android we see Dr. Hito create before the beginning of the superhero movie was Dino Droid 1. It's the strongest android that Dr. Hito created up until this point, and it's without a doubt a biomechanical android with no energy model. The only reason it's as strong as it is due to the corpse that was used to make it. Something I wanted to mention about this android is that it was made quickly, and it was obvious that Dr. Hito focused strictly on power. This shows us that creating a powerful android isn't really that hard, and it isn't really as time consuming as many would believe. However, the part that takes the most time is the intelligence and the behavioral programming of the android. The next androids to be produced in DBS were the Gammas. The Gammas are mechanical type androids. This is evidence as you can literally hear metal clanking whenever they're fighting. Now, the interesting thing about the Gammas is I believe that they do have an energy source, however it isn't any of the models that Dr. Gero made in the past. It's actually a modified version of the infinite energy model. And this scene right here explains it all. You see, the Gammas have infinite stamina, that is until they burn through all of their ki. And this can be seen when Gamma 1 calculates how much power he has through percentages and notes that once his ki is depleted, then stamina will become a problem. It's actually a really good way to get the same results as the infinite energy model without having to invest as much time. Because these guys were made in 6 months, it makes sense that Dr. Hito cut some corners in order to get these guys out faster. Now, in terms of strength, these guys are on par with post-Moro Saga Super Saiyan Gohan. Some sources say that they're on par with Blue Goku and Vegeta, but until we get concrete evidence like feats or Goku and Vegeta stating that themselves, then we really can't say. The Gammas, for those who don't know, this included me before I did research, are based off of a character called Ultraman, which is this guy right here. The latest android is none other than Cell Max, and he's a carbon copy of the original Cell, just juiced out, and obviously way bigger. Meaning that he's a bio-android that most likely uses organic energy. And in terms of strength, oh boy. This guy is supposedly as strong as or stronger than current Goku and Vegeta, which I find hard to believe, but we'll see in the future with the manga. Not much to really say about this guy, but his intelligence compared to his strength supports the idea that creating a strong android doesn't take that long, but it's the intelligence and the behaviors of the android that takes the longest to get right. Okay, moving on to Dragon Ball GT, we only get 2 androids, and the first is literally, and I mean literally, a copy-paste 17 from hell. There isn't anything new about him, but he is important for the next android that we see. Introducing Super 17.
Look how they massacred my boy.
Out of all the humanoid androids before him, I must say Super 17 has to be the most interesting. Besides being a biomechanical type android, the thing that makes him stand out is the fact that he's a hybrid between the infinite energy model and the energy absorption model, which is evidenced due to the red orbs on the palm of his hands and him being composed of 2 infinite energy models. In a sense, Super 17 can be looked at as GT's version of Cell. Now in terms of strength, Super 17 can go toe to toe with Super Saiyan 4. So yeah. I guess we should move on. The last android that is worth talking about is Android 21, and she's a biomechanical type android that we first meet in Dragon Ball FighterZ. We don't know what energy model she uses, but if I were to guess, I say that she uses the infinite energy model. The reason 21 is a very interesting android is due to the fact that she seems to be composed of a number of different antagonists in the series. Frieza, Cell, and Buu are all a part of her true form. She also shares some of the same abilities as these fighters, most notably Majin Buu's ability to turn people into candy. In terms of strength, she can be seen going up against Blue Goku, which says a lot about her strength. But with that, this marks the end of this video, so yeah. Thank you to everyone that watched this video. I hope you have a great day. Peace, peace, deuce, deuce.